Hi guys, it's John back again with another model in box review. Today I think the photograph tells a story all of its own, doesn't it? Today we're doing the ubiquitous Douglas DC3 Dakota, although the model I'm actually reviewing is the Italeri C47 Skytrain. There's probably no need to introduce the aircraft or even try and describe it. Most people know a lot of the history about the aeroplane and how it was so difficult to replace in the commercial aircraft industry. So we'll just go straight into what we normally do, the in-box review. Starting off with the boxing history. The Italeri kit was originally released in 1980 as a C-47 Skytrain with the United States naval markings. So it was actually, if you really think about it hard enough, it was an R4D. Or rather an R4, because an R4D had a different airframe. But the R4, it was originally released as a C-47 Skytrain by Italeri. And the serial number, and it's very important to remember this model serial number, number 127, because number 127 is another one of these Godfather kits that Italeri did. And I'll explain more as I go through the options and the boxing history as you see going through it. This mould, originally released in 1980, has been featured not only by Italeri with modified sprues and different decals as different aircraft, but also by other companies. And we'll get to that in the options, as I said before. 1980 release, that's model number 127, C-47 Skytrain. A year later, it was released with civilian markings in Swiss Airlines markings, but it also had British European Airways, Lufthansa, Air France, Sabina and Alitalia, as well as KLM and ANA markings. So this kit actually enables you to model an awful lot of companies' DC3 Dakotas. And if you do manage to get hold of this kit, it's a really, really good kit to do lots of different options from, because the airlines look fantastic, the markings look fantastic on the DC3. And you could theoretically buy all, 8 kits? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kits. You could buy 8 kits and do all 8 different versions. But the serial number here, number 132, is a funny, weird thing, because number 132 usually at the time when the kit was released denoted the difference between the C-47 and the DC-3. The civilian aircraft were intended to be released under number 132. They had exactly the same sprue inside. The plastic was identical, but the markings were different, and obviously the instruction leaflet was different as well, because it had the colour codes and layouts and everything for the different liveries of the 8 different airlines. But number 132 was actually 127 sprues. It was just modified and reboxed. So that came out a year later in 1981. Then in 1989 they re-released this kit again, but with different markings. Number 132 again, so again you have to remember that it's 127 sprues, but it's 132 denoted the DC3. This time you had decals for Classic Air, Lufthansa, Air France, Alitalia, KLM, as well as the Swiss Airlines markings on the box. So there were less options available when the kit was released 8 years later. That was 89's release. Then things started to get really weird, because in 1989 they also released the AC-47 Spooky variant of the military DC-3 Dakota. This was the variant that was introduced in the Vietnam War, which had 4 miniguns and sometimes a 5th minigun, which you can see in the box there, poking through the rear loading door. They were 7.62 miniguns, and they all fired on one point. They were all aimed at one point, so that they fired in one particular position when the aircraft was 3,000 foot above the ground. And they were very effective. Because the DC-3 had a very, very long loiter. I think it could loiter over a battleground for something like 5 hours at about 70 to 80 miles an hour, just continually circling and providing ground support for ground troops. And the AC-47 was featured there as model number 1167 by Italeri. but again it's model number 127 sprues with different decals and an additional sprue incorporating the various extra glazings required, plus the miniguns themselves, but everything else is identical to the C47 Skytrain kit from 1980. Now then, 1993, you went into the C47 and model number 127 crops up again in a boxing. This kit comprised of US markings for the United States Army Air Force and also RAF markings for a Douglas DC-3 Dakota Mark III from the Royal Air Force. This kit is the feature of the review that I'll be doing, but I'll be doing a later boxing of the kit. I think mine is 2010, but we'll get to that in a minute. That's 1993's release. Then in 1997, Italeri released a special commemorative edition for the Royal New Zealand Air Force. This is the Flying Kiwis DC-3 Dakota. It was very limited run, and if you do manage to get hold of one of these, I wouldn't build it because it's worth a bomb. It's very, very collectible. But that's the Flying Kiwis Dakota, and that was released in 1997. Then in 2006, Italeri released a brand new type of box. Again, you're looking at number 127 for the Skytrain, so this is 127th boxing again. It's exactly the same kit, same markings, same everything, but they just put a blue border around the outside of the box. And I think this is the experimental blue border for what eventually became the boxing that you're about to see in a minute. That was 2006, C47 Skytrain. Then in 2007, we have the boxing that I'll be covering. This is 2010, not 2007. This is 2010's release of the C47 Skytrain. Decals for two versions. This is the American variant and the RAF, this, just as it was in 1997. That's that boxing. Then came in 2013 a breakaway from tooling. This is actually the ESCI tooling of the Douglas DC-3 Dakota and C47 Skytrain, but I think Italeri purchased ESCI lock, stock and barrel at around about 2011, 2012, and they decided to release this particular kit's mouldings as model 1338, and it had 4 different versions available in decals. That's an RAF, USAF, I think that's a French, and I'm not sure, but it might be an Italian or Belgium. No, I think it's Belgium actually. Belgium markings, because the Free Belgium Air Force were operating from RAF bases during World War II, and so were the French. The French were there as well. So that's the 2013 release. And in 2014, Model 127 sprues appeared again. This is Model 1349 of a new release of the DC-3 Dakota in Swiss Airlines markings. But these are a lot more modern Swiss Airlines markings. I think these markings appeared on the aircraft in around about the late 70s. And the markings, they're still HBIRN, I think it was the same plane, but the markings for that aircraft I think were from the late 60s, and I think they changed the livery slightly, but not an awful lot. 1349 was released in 2014, and the latest variant of the DC-3 is the Breitling DC-3, and I think this aircraft is flying now. And this is again 127 sprues, but it's under the 1393 model number release. It's exactly the same kit as you get in the 132 boxings, but it's 127 sprues with civilian markings to make a DC-3. Now then, that's the boxing history, leading from 1980 to 2017. I'll leave you with a picture now of the United States Army Air Force C-47 Skytrain. This is a view of the Dakota doing a 70th anniversary D-Day commemorative parachute drop in Normandy during that year, which was quite interesting. Something's popped up on my computer, I'll just get rid of that quickly. And what I want to do quickly now is just pan onto the table so you can see what I'm actually doing the review on. And I'll try and take it back a little bit. I think that should do it. Bring the camera up a little bit so you should still be able to see. There we go. Now then, this is the box we're doing. This is the 2013 release, I do believe. think it's a 2013 release kit. Nice big box. It's so big, in fact, that I can hardly fit it on the table to show you properly in the pictures. And I'll just take all this stuff out of the plastic because you don't really want to see me opening all this stuff up in the plastic and all that, do you? So we'll put the sprues over here for now. We'll go through the sprues in a minute because the sprues actually have a bit of a surprise. And first of all, I want to go through the instruction leaflet because the instruction leaflet is actually quite nice for this kit. The instruction leaflet folds up into about A5 size, and on the front page you've got the company logo, the model description, scale, and the model number, serial number there, 127. And then you've got in various different, I think it's 6 different languages, you've got a bit of gumph and history and not much in the way of stats there, but a bit of history on the aircraft itself. And then you turn the page over and you've got a parts plan, which I am really a big fan of, especially people like me who have bad eyesight and they need times 2.5 glasses now instead of times 1. These call out plans for the parts are really handy because it's not always easy to see those numbers on the sprues when you're looking at them on the plastic sprues, is it? And on the bottom you've got the call outs there for the different colour paints used on the kit during and post construction, which is quite nice. It's nice to have an idea of what you're supposed to put on the kit. And the kit builds up into 5 different sections, and looking at it I would say it's going to build up pretty fast. It's going to build pretty quick. It's a big plane, so you know it's going to appear to be quite large pretty quickly. You put the airframe together by the end of section 3, but in section 1 you've got the interior floor plan, 3 bulkheads and the forward flight cabin with the instrument panel and the 2 joystick yokes there, because the DC3 had steering yoke columns. And then in section 2 you put the airframe together with all the windows, tail empennage and the lower main spar for the main wing. There's quite a few windows to put into this kit as well, so you'll have to be quite careful when you're putting the windows in not to smear them with glue. Section 3 you put the main wings together and the undercarriage assemblies, which are put there in a little sub-assembly box above there. It looks quite simple, doesn't it? And then you got this part here, section 4, and this is probably the only part of the kit that I think on the plan looks quite complicated, but I don't think it is. The reason why it looks complicated is because the engine cowlings actually assemble in 2 halves on both sides, and then you've got a bulkhead that the engine bolts to, and I'm guessing you put the bulkhead into the aperture in the main wing spar there, fit the engine together, and then you fit the engine cowlings around the engine and then apply the exhaust pipe there at the back. Can you see that? And I think you obviously just repeat that for the other side, and then you put the propellers on, I would say before you put the engine together, because you've got a little retainer, it's not a pin, it's a retainer circle at the back there. So I'll put the propeller onto the forward row of cylinders, put the little retainer pin and then assemble the engine together and then fit that to the bulkhead, and then you can paint the whole lot and then attach it to the airframe before you put the cowlings together. So that's quite a sensible method of construction. I quite like that. And then you've got section 5, which is final assembly prior to paint, and this is basically your windshield, which you can see there, a few aerials, oil cooler ducts and air ducts. There's the wing searchlights there, and there's even a rear navigation light on the tail fin, which is for version A only. I think that's for the American aircraft, I think. I don't think the RAF one had it. No, the RAF one didn't carry it. Although I think it does now. The one that's in the BBMF flight, I'm pretty sure it does. You've also got a tail cone there, part 59A, which it's almost added as an afterthought, isn't it? There's another interesting thing about the DC-3 that a lot of people don't realise, that they actually built 2 completely different military versions. They built the C-47 Skytrain and the C-53 Skytrooper, and the only difference between the 2, can you see on the rear fuselage there, that loading door? The loading door on the C-47 was a double loading door. It had a personnel door and a cargo opening chute which hinged backwards. And on the C-53 Skytrooper, it only had the personnel door. It didn't have the cargo hinged door as well. But they only built about 180 of the C-53s because they found that the C-47 variant was much more capable of accommodating different loads and different types of missions, and it could still perform the parachute role because it had the personnel door as well. So they built thousands of C-47s, but only about 180 C-53s. But you can still see a few C-53s flying around in the world. But I don't know of many companies that actually build a C-53 Skytrooper as a dedicated kit. I've never seen one on the market. So that's the build section of the instructions. I'll just quickly show you the loadout for the call out for the colour chart here. And you've got the RAF and the American version here. And the interesting thing really that's different about it is that the RAF version doesn't carry invasion stripes on the upper surfaces of the wing. But there's also something that some other people don't realise as well, that a lot of RAF aircraft that were involved in the invasion of Normandy didn't carry invasion stripes on the upper half of the fuselage either. They only tended to come up halfway up the roundel and then they stopped. And I don't know why this is, why the USAF adopted the extra bands, or whether it was the RAF that, the ground staff maybe couldn't have been bothered to do all of that. But that is the case. A lot of the aircraft only had invasion stripes visible from underneath. Right, transfers, or decals as people like to call them. These decals are actually really nice. There aren't very many of them on the sheet. I'll just quickly show you them. That's what you get in the box. The RAF variant is on the lower half there, as you can see. USAF variant on the upper half. And these decals have been current with this kit since 1993. Now, the decals I've got on my hand, I'm not sure what the 93 release is going to be like, but these decals are really, really nice. They don't seem to carry much carrier film. They're really clear, crystal clear in fact, and the register on them is absolutely spot on. There are 4 decals there. I don't think you can read what's on them. The camera isn't going to focus either, but I don't think there's anything visibly readable on them. They just look like obligatory yellow writing that you can't read that fits onto the aircraft somewhere or other. But those boat motifs are quite nice. And the roundels and the American stars and bars, they're really, really good quality. Backing film is virtually invisible. And although the decals are quite raised, I can feel them, they are quite raised, so I don't think this marking sheet is actually built by Cartograph. I think it's built by somebody else. But I like the look of the decals. The decals look very good, so I'm very, very impressed with that so far. The decals look very good. I'm not going to take these transparency parts out of this bag, because I want to try and keep them as nice as possible. But there's not an awful lot to write home about or check on them, really. They look pretty clear. There's no cracked or... There's not an awful lot of flash on them at all either, is there? This kit, you have to remember this kit is 1980 original release, and the mould is that old. They're quite good quality. I'm quite impressed with that. The windshield's really quite nice. Astrodome there, quite nice. Yep, so the transparency parts look quite good. Now then, we'll have a look at the sprues, and this is the first sprue I looked at, which is the one that incorporates the main wings. And the first thing I noticed about them is that they have recessed panel lines. Now remember, this is a 1980s kit, and they're recessed panel lines. The fabric-covered control surfaces on the Dakota are faithfully reproduced in the model's mouldings. And the aircraft is actually built from duralumin. And it has duralumin main spars with steel reinforced cross members. The main spar is steel reinforced, and the actual ribs and everything else are duralumin. And the wing was incredibly strong. There was actually a story from Douglas that an inspector for the airworthiness part of the American Airworthiness Certificate Board came to visit Douglas when they were flight testing the DC-1. And the DC-1, of course, was a one-off prototype that became the DC-2 production aircraft, but they only built 2 of those. And then they went straight into the sleeper variant, which was the DC-3. And they turned up And the guy said, I don't think that wing looks very strong, because it had quite a lot of anhedral and quite a lot of leading edge sweep. And he said, I don't think it's very strong. So Douglas drove a road roller over the wing and it didn't even dent. That's the story. It's featured in quite a lot of books that I've read. So yeah, these parts, the parts on this kit are actually quite nice. And as I said before, you've got the fabric covered control surfaces there, and they look faithfully reproduced. There's recessed panel lines on the tail planes. That's faithfully reproduced. The bulkheads there, they're quite nicely moulded as well. They're, you know, I think this is going to look quite nice when it's finished and built up. The main wheels, even on the DC3, the real thing, they weren't that featured. There wasn't many things about it that were featured. They were a bit like a Lancaster wheel in many ways. They were just big. The instrument panel there, I think that will come up quite nice. Is it going to show you the dials? Yeah, we've got the dials up there. They should come up quite nice. There's no decal in the kit at all for the instrument panel, so you'll have to paint them, but they, you know, I think it does look quite nice. Now then, the second sprue, this is the final sprue, and this took me quite by aback as well, because remembering that this kit is now 37 years old, although this model itself was actually released 27 years old in 2000, no sorry, it was 2000 and, I think it's 2013 the variant I've got. It might be 2010, I'm not sure. I'll have to check back on the video and you can have a look, but this kit is absolutely flash free. There is a part on the kit that has actually snapped a little bit, but I think it will glue up quite nice, and that's one of the main undercarriage legs. Can you see it there? Where it's snapped off there on one side. You can just see it. I think that will glue up all right though. It's not really an issue for me. I think I can sort that. Now the exterior of the fuselage is really nicely moulded. Very, very impressed with the recessed panel lines. The fabric covered rudder there is nice and faithfully reproduced. The engine cowlings look quite nice. Very impressed with those. That's the return yoke for the main undercarriage. The pilots look a bit alien. That's probably the only part of the kit that I can honestly say, yeah, could have done better with them, couldn't we? And then you get to the floor pan, or what's called the flight cabin floor. And the flight cabin floor, now I'm going to post a link, I'm actually going to post two links on the description of this video. One where you can see 1338's kit being built up by a submarine called James, and there's another one of the new tool Airfix Dakota, which is built by another submarine, a good friend of mine down in Devon called Tim, and he built a new build one for a friend of his called Doug, and his videos are called Doug's DAC. And I was very impressed by both the builds on these two. The new tool Airfix kit is a superlative, absolutely fantastic model, and it builds up beautiful, and Tim did a fantastic job of it, as you'll see. And the other kit, the 1338 kit, which is the ESCI mould, was actually done by James, and he built a good job of that as well. But it has different sprues, and the interior build of the ESCI kit is a little bit more complicated than this one, and that's where I started to feel a bit, oh god. The interior floor pan of this kit is virtually all built, the seats and everything, they're all built into the floor pan. The flight deck is, I'm not sure if it's even going to come up there very well, but it's very basic. The interior of the kit is very basic, and that's the only part of the kit that belies its 1980 heritage. And then you turn the sprue round and you have a look at these engines, and these engines are really nice. There's a bit of flash on here, if I can get rid of it for you. No, I can't. I'll have to get rid of it when I'm building it. But these engines are really nice. And I like the look of those. I think they'll paint up nice, and it's another one. This is another one for my mate Tim in Torquay, because I think he would have a field day with that with metallic paint and oil wash. Yep, I think you'd have a good time with that. Anyway, but the interior of the fuselage is really, really bland, as you can see. There's no detail in there whatsoever, but to be honest with you, through those little windows, and it'll be quite dark unless you have the cargo door open, I don't think you'd have to worry too much about that. The bulkheads will darken that right down. Yeah, which is interesting. And then there's something else also interesting about this kit. On the C47 Mould 127, you've got a window that's blackened out here. Now I think on 132's build, the 132 model number, which is the same sprue as this, I think you have to push that window out. So if you turn the fuselage over, can you see it's got a cutout zone? And I think you'd have to cut that out for this final window that goes in that position, which is quite interesting. I didn't notice that before, but that's very apparent. Here you have the cargo door. It's quite a nicely moulded cargo door with the personnel door to one side. C53 didn't have that part, it only had that part. And then you've got the paddle type propellers. So these propellers were fitted to DACs late in their service life. The earlier propellers were similar to the commercial DC-3, but these propellers enabled the aircraft to fly and pull better loads at lower altitudes so that the gliders could be towed by the DACs because the gliders weren't pressurised and neither were the Dakotas. So that's the parts for Model 127. I'll just put the bag over the top because you don't really want to see me putting all that back in there, do you? I'll put the box lid back over the top there for you there. And then what I want to do quickly is I want to go through the options very well, as quickly as I can for you, because the options, there are a lot of them. There are quite a lot of them. But there aren't a huge number of different kits of the C47, as you'll see. I'll just take a quick drink. Right. Options. Believe it or not, Hasegawa do a 1/200 scale DC-3 Dakota. I'm not sure when this kit was released, but this kit is quite old. And 1/200 sounds quite small, but the Dakota, as I said, is quite a large aeroplane. Not that long, but its wingspan is huge. It rivals that of the Wellington. It's sort of in between the Wellington and the Lancaster's wingspan. So it's about the size of a Wellington, but longer wingspan. And this kit is actually, although it's only 1/200 scale, it's quite a large kit. And I've seen the sprues in photo form, and the sprues look half decent. Hasegawa released the 200 scale C47 Skytrain. They also released it as an AC-47 gunship in 1/200 scale, same mould, and they also released it as a DC-3. This is an all Nippon Airways, but I think they did release it in several other versions as well, several other airlines. That's 1/200 scale. Hasegawa have a monopoly on that. Nobody else has produced a 200 scale kit or reboxed their moulds. In 1/144th, you have a few standalone kits. There is the Eastern Express offering, which is the Lysanov Li-2, which is the Soviet copied DC-3. Quite a lot of DC-3 copied Dakotas in Russia carried a mid-upper gunner here in the Lysanov Li-2T, but they also did a Lysanov Ni-2M, which was the standard copy without the gun on the top. Eastern Express also produced the C47 Skytrain. This is actually a Lysanov, sorry, this is a DC-3 Lend-Lease to Soviet Union, but it was put in Soviet markings, obviously, for obvious reasons. C47 was also released by Eastern Express as an R4D. This is an R4D8 variant, or a C117D, and this aircraft had a revised tail empennage, which had squared off tail planes, squared off wingtips, and squared off tail fin. And it gave the appearance that the aircraft was much bigger than it actually was, but it's the same size as the DC-3. So that's Eastern Express's offerings. Then you had a company called Minicraft. This is the American company Minicraft model kits, not Academy Minicraft, not to be mistaken. Minicraft did an awful lot of kits in 144th, and they did a C47. I also think they did a DC-3 as well, but I haven't got any pictures of the DC-3. That's the Minicraft offering, and Rodan also produced a model of this kit. Now I'm not sure if Rodan have their own moulds for this, or if they're Eastern Express moulds, I'm not sure. I've tried to find out, but ScaleMates only seem to cover the Rodan version as a Rodan kit, so guessing it's probably a standalone mould, but Rodan produced this kit. But I'm pretty sure originally it was a Toco kit, because Rodan is Toco's modelling department that broke away and renamed themselves. So yeah, that's the Rodan C47. Then you get the VAC-form offering, and the reason why I've put this in as an option is because they do two different versions. They do a DC3 and they also do a Dart Dakota under here. And the Dart Dakota is the DC3 with Rolls-Royce Dart turboprop engines. And the airframe is VAC-form, but I think the rest of the parts may be resin, I'm not sure. But the Welsh Models kit, it is obtainable. It's not easy to get hold of, but it is obtainable. You can get it on social sales sites quite often. And then you have 1/100th scale. 1/100th scale is the next scale up, and this is another Godfather kit. Originally released as a Douglas C47 Skytrain by a company called Nitto. The company also released about 8 months later the DC3 Dakota with civil markings, again by Nitto. And every 1/100th scale offering of the C47 or the Dakota is actually the Nitto moulds. I've seen the Nitto moulds in photo form. They're not bad. They're not bad at all, actually. So Entex released the Nitto mouldings as the DC3, also as the plane that changed the world. You have optional undercarriage on this, which is quite interesting. And then you have the C47 Goonie Bird variant, and this is the same mould as the Nitto mould, but as a C47 in 1/100th scale. And then this company came out, Deutsche. Now Deutsche produced the C47 Skytrain in Royal Canadian Air Force markings, but they also produced it in an awful lot of other Air Force markings. But Deutsche generally only provide markings for one variant in each box, so you won't be able to get an option if you buy a Deutsche kit. But that's Nitto sprues as well. Nitto sprues also feature in the Douglas DC3 Dakota in the classic propliner range, again by Deutsche. 1/100th scale goes now to 1/72nd, and this is probably the scale that you will find most of the variants and options that are available in. There's a standalone mould by A Model, but it's not of the DC3, it's of the L2D2 Tabby, which I think is a Nakajima company copy of the DC3, and it had Japanese engines. I think they were Seikei engines from Zeros that powered the DC3, but it was a direct copy. You also had the Airfix first tooling of the Douglas Dakota. Interesting to note, this is a Series 4 kit, and look at the price tag on the box there. It says 55p. And now I can remember when Series 4 models were 52p, because I can remember buying a Bismarck in 1/600th scale in Series 4, and it was 52p when I was a boy. Right, Airfix first tooling also featured in the gunship, which had revised sprues to incorporate different windows and the miniguns in this kit. This was the original first tooling of the Dakota, and I have actually built this kit, and yeah, it's not great. The first tooling Dakota wasn't great, but that was an option, C47 Spooky, or as they call it, the AC47 gunship. Now then, Airfix also released, and I think this was during their takeover time from Hornby, they released the ESCI Mouldings as an Airfix kit, and you could get this with Douglas Dakota RAF markings or C47 Skytrain American markings. And I think this is the Dakota that features in the BBMF support flight, and it often takes part in flying displays in place of the Lancaster when the Lancaster is not operational. But this is an ESCI moulding. You remember the 1338 that was taken by Italeri? It's an ESCI kit. Airfix also did this kit, which is 127's boxing moulding. This is the Italeri offering of the Douglas DC3 Dakota in Royal Canadian Air Force markings. This was an Airfix kit release, I think, in the late 90s, possibly early 2000s. And this kit is model number 127, the kit I'm reviewing. Airfix also, of course, released the fabulous new tool model, which I'll feature a listing link here so that you can have a look at Tim's build. And he built this kit for a friend of his called Doug. Really, really nice kit. This kit is probably the best model of a DC3 anywhere, in any scale, anywhere in the world, I would have thought at the moment. Airfix's new tools are absolutely fabulous. I can't fault them. Classic Airplanes also released numbers 127 with a specific additional resin mould attached to the kit. And this is at the Douglas C-47 Nassau, or the German Special Operational Unit, which went into flights for experimental and research and development purposes. They often had a specialised nose cone and different aerials fitted all over the aircraft for different forms of research. And that kit is featured as a Classic Planes plastic model with additional resin parts, but it's all fitted onto number 127's mouldings. Now then, the ESCI kit. This is the ESCI moulding, original first released by ESCI, and the Douglas DC-3 airliner came out in TWA markings. That is an option available in 72nd. They also did the DC-3 Dakota Lend-Lease to the Soviet Union, and this kit is quite easily available also, but it was released under the ESCI ERTL label. And I think these are quite popular in America and the Eastern Bloc countries in the very late 80s. So yeah, you can get hold of this kit quite easily, but this is the ordinary ESCI moulding. Then you had the ESCI version of the R4D5, and this is the specialised ski undercarriage arranged R4, which was a development of the DC-3, and it's very interesting to note that this hasn't got the squared off tail empennage. I think this aircraft carries the same airframe. It's an R4D5, not a D8, as the ordinary DC-3, but because it's operated by the US Navy, it's an R4 and not a DC-3 or a C-47. That's the ESCI offerings. Hobby Boss do this kit in 1/72nd scale as well, and the box looks like that. This is very easily obtainable as well, and you can also get the kit in First Tooling Airfix Sprues under the MPC label, which is owned by Airfix anyway. This kit here, if you can remember it, is the kit that's featured in the major C-47 Dakota boxing. You can also get these two variants in the MPC offering as well. Revell released the DC-3. Funnily enough, they've never actually made a DC-3 mould in any scale whatsoever. The DC-3 moulding featured here is the ESCI kit in 1/72nd scale. And then Testers released the serial number 127 model as a Testers Italeri offering, first as a DC-3, and then later in the year they brought the C-47 model out. And the C-47 model is actually exactly the same kit that you got in the 1980 release Italeri kit. So that's interesting too, isn't it? Now then, 1/48 scale. This is the last scale that you'll find a feature on. The C-47 was originally built by Monogram, and I think you'll find Monogram features in all of the Revell offerings. The Revell kits are all Monogram sprues. So Monogram C-47 Skytrain. They also did a Revell boxing of this kit. It's a C-47 Skytrain, again Monogram's sprues. And they did an AC-47D gunship, again Monogram sprues. But I think Revell introduced an additional sprue in the kit to incorporate the extra windows and the minigun fittings. Now then, now we get to the only kit, in my opinion, that would rival the new Tool 72nd scale Airfix offering, and this is the 48 scale Skytrain by Trumpeter. The Trumpeter kit, as most Trumpeter kits go, is exceptionally good. I'm not going to say it's better than the new Tool Airfix kit in accuracy and quality, mouldings quality and whatnot, detail, but I am going to say that it's it's on a par, but it's an awful lot more expensive than the Airfix kit, as you'll see in a minute in the costings. So that is basically all the options and costings. That's a nice view there of I think that's an American C47 during the 70th anniversary. And I'm now going to pan the camera down because I just want to show you something on the table whilst I'm giving you the gumph. So you've got something nice to look at. There we go. Whilst I'm giving you the gumph on the C47 serial number 127. There we go, that's not so bad, is it? Now then, the kit itself is the Italeri Douglas C47 Skytrain. Just put that up a little tiny bit because it seems to like to drop down a little bit. There we go. The serial number on the kit is number 127 and it's moulded in 1/72 scale. There are decals for two versions. The first is for a Douglas C47A Skytrain of the 94th Squadron 439th Tactical Transport Group, United States Army Air Force, based in Britain, June 1944. And the second is for a Douglas Dakota Mark III of 271 Squadron RAF Normandy, post-1944 D-Day landings. The kit comprises 70 parts on 2 green plastic sprues and 12 parts on 1 clear plastic sprue, totaling 82 parts in total, and the kit's measurements are 10.5 inches long by 15 inches in span and about 3 inches high on its undercarriage. Options and costs. These are, for some of them, approximated because I'm going off what some of the other kits in their ranges cost, namely the specialised ones, but we'll get to those. In 1/200 scale, the Hasegawa offerings, first the Douglas AC-47D gunship cost between £10 and £25, depending on the quality and the condition of the box. The Douglas C-47 Skytrain and the DC-3 boxings are between £7 and £25. In 144 scale, the Eastern Express Douglas C-47 Skytrain is £10 to £20. The Eastern Express Douglas R4D is £11 to £23, and the Eastern Express Lucenoff Li2 is between £12 and £20. The Minicraft model kits version of the Douglas DC-3 is about £10. The Rodan Douglas C-47 Skytrain is £10 to £15, and the Welsh Models VAC form kit of the Douglas DC-3 and Dart Dakota is between £11 and £15. The 1/100 scale offerings from Deutsche, the Douglas C-47 Skytrain is £18 to £22, as is their DC-3. The Entex Douglas DC-3 Dakota offering is £14 to £20. The Nitto Douglas DC-3 Dakotas are anything from £40 to £100. They are getting very collectible now. Very, very collectible now. In 72nd scale, the A-model Nakajima L2D2 Tabby is about £20. Airfix's first tooling of the Dakota Mark III is £12 to £40, depending on the condition. Their first tooling of the AC-47 gunship is £20 to £25, and the ESCI tooling Douglas Dakota Mark III from Airfix is £5 to £30, depending on the condition. Airfix's Italeri tooling of the Douglas DC-3 is £10 to £20, and the new tool Douglas Dakota Mark III is £23 to £30. The classic plain Italeri Douglas Nassau, I've never seen it on offer, but they do a Luftwaffe options boxing, and I've seen that advertised for about 15 quid. So I'm going to guess it's probably about the same price, maybe £15-20-ish. The ESCI Douglas DC-3 Dakota is 20 quid. The ESCI Ertl Douglas C-47 Skytrain is between £17 and £20, and the ESCI R4D Skytrain is between £23 and £25. The Hobby Boss Douglas C-47 Skytrain is £25 to £30, and then we have all the Italeri boxings. The numbers 127 boxing, 1393 and 1349 DC-3 Dakotas and Skytrains are between £7 and £30, but the number 127 in particular is between £7 to £10 usually. The numbers 132 DC-3 Dakota from Italeri is between £10 and £15, and the numbers 167 AC47 Spooky is between £20 and £25. The Italeri ESCI offering moulding boxing from 1338 Douglas Dakota Mark III is £21 to £25, and the MPC First Tooling Airfix kit of the Douglas DC3 Dakota is £20 to £30. The Revell ESCI Douglas DC3 Dakota is £10 to £25, and the Testors Italeri 127 Douglas C47 and the DC3 is between £7 and £12. In 1/48 scale, the monogram Douglas C47 Skytrain is between £20 and £30. The Revell monogram Douglas C47 Skytrain is between £15 and £22, and the Douglas AC47 gunship from Revell is between £15 and £25. The Trumpeter C47 Skytrain is about £30 to £45. Now, the only kit I've left off is the Flying Kiwis DC3 Dakota, which is an ESCI kit special edition, and it is limited edition. I'm not sure how many they made, but it wasn't very many. I've only ever seen one of these kits up for sale, and it was quite a while ago. It was about 3 years ago, and it was going for about 75 quid, and it sold. So if you do manage to get hold of one of these kits, try and keep a hold of it and don't build it, because I think it will appreciate the value. Now then, conclusions. Well, to sum up, the Italeri C47 is not really a contender for the new Tool Airfix kit, but being a bit of a godfather kit, it will feature inside many companies' boxings, and it's not a bad model either. Its good moulding and recessed panel lines don't give the kit's vintage away as a 1980 release, and there are no fit issues reported by any reviewer online and any of the kit builders from the IPMS and professional models community. The kit builds into a fairly accurate C47 as well, and I would recommend this kit as I think it's a reasonably cheap option that may surprise you by its quality. But be aware that the Italeri 1338 kit is actually an ESCI kit that looks good too. Check out the links to a subber of mine that's built the ESCI kit, and also I'm putting another link on the description of this video for another subber of mine that built the new Tool Airfix Dakota. So I hope this video has been of some use. Please give me a like, check out my other videos if you like what you see, and also if you like what you see on the videos, don't forget to subscribe. New subscribers, questions and comments are always appreciated and very welcome, and any questions I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one, lads. Bye bye.